feeling of overwhelm, this feeling of like, oh my gosh, I have to start my life completely over after my ex. How am I going to do this? I had a client recently who said, it's a major overhaul. And so I want to address this because a lot of people get stuck here living in overwhelm. And before we get into like how to fix this, I want to talk about two main things, main points that may bring some clarity or a shift in your perspective. The first thing that you need to understand is that if you are facing the future from a lens of overwhelm or the lens of like, how am I going to manage my life feeling single, being single? Am I ever going to meet a great partner? Will my kids ever see me in a healthy relationship? If these things are spiraling in your mind, the first thing to remember is this is normal. The second thing that's happening though is that you're living in survival mode. You're operating from survival mode. You're operating from literally a fight or flight emotional, nervous system, like mind, body, place in your life. And what a lot of people don't realize is that they were operating like that in the relationship to a certain degree, at least in the beginning, somewhat. Most of the people that we work with here and talk to on breakthrough calls always know in the very beginning of dating somebody that there were red flags. But because of her prior relational trauma and her fear of being alone, which is not all the time a conscious fear, her fear of being abandoned, she will continue to stay in that relationship hoping for the best, in spite of all of the signs that keep growing and growing and growing. So if you have done that in your love life with several partners, or maybe just one partner that you hung in there and you justified why it was best for you to stay in an emotionally abusive or unhealthy relationship, you're used to living in chaos. And chaos is going to feel normal for you, like a fish is to water. And if you're facing your life single without all the chaos from your ex, what often happens is that people will create chaos, because chaos, again, is what their brain and their body and their subconscious are used to. Some of the ways that we see people creating chaos even after she's left are jumping right into dating again, or having like still being in the divorce process and not at all emotionally ready to entertain a healthy relationship, but getting right into an emotional affair, another relationship, getting right into dating. If it's not dating, then throwing herself in her career, becoming a workaholic, still struggling to set boundaries with family members and friends, and feeling completely depleted and burnout. And this often we see goes on for quite a while, months, sometimes years. And the things that kept you, the behaviors that kept you in a toxic relationship, trying to change yourself to fit into that relationship, trying to change other people, hoping other people change, or numbing yourself to the pain, or numbing yourself to the emotional turmoil when trying to change somebody didn't work and when trying to change yourself didn't work. Those three behaviors you're going to continue to play out in other parts of your life, because those are the survival patterns you used most of the time unconsciously to try to get your needs met in a bad relationship. When you do that, you are living in fight or flight. And when you leave, that doesn't magically go away. You're going to continue to live in fight or flight. And therefore, if you're living in fight or flight, the idea of creating anything new is going to feel gigantic. The idea of your life being different is going to feel enormous. And the hard part about this is that anything that's going to be remotely out of your comfort zone, that's going to lead you to where you want to go, is going to feel so massively uncomfortable that you are likely, especially if you ignored a lot of red flags in the relationship, you are going to be likely to talk yourself out of that, because chaos feels normal for you. And a lot of people, unfortunately, if that's normal, like a fish is to water, they're going to actually fight harder to stay in chaos. And a good analogy for this, I don't know the specific research study, but there's a research, multiple, I'm sure, research studies on homeless people, the homeless population. So there are studies that show that when homeless people who've been long-term homeless find housing, they get off the streets, they get a job, a part-time job, they get a bank account, all this kind of stuff. When they're left up to themselves after they've kind of left the support that got them off the streets, maybe they were working with a social worker, within like a month or two, like 80% of those homeless people wind back up on the streets because feeling homeless, being homeless is more comfortable for them. Chaos and instability is more comfortable for them than a life of predictability, security, and safety. So first point, chaos is the norm. If you had a chaotic, uncertain, unpredictable, walking on eggshells, toxic relationship, you're going to be living in a trauma response when you exit that. You were probably operating from past trauma to stay in that relationship, and that's not going to magically go away once you leave. It's going to continue following you around until you do the deep work on you to heal it and make different choices. The second point that I want to make is your pattern. This kind of plays into like the homeless population analogy. Your pattern of avoidance, if you ignored red flags, right? If maybe you're out of that relationship now and you're on your own, but still the future feels like a big giant question mark, or you feel overwhelmed about thinking about how you're ever going to have a healthy relationship again, or how you're going to fully move on from your ex or stop thinking about him. Again, every time you think about your ex, every time you think about what he did or what he's doing with a new person right now, you are throwing your body, your mind and your body, because these two work in hand, you are throwing yourself into a trauma response. You can create a trauma response just by a thought alone. So most people aren't aware of that, and they just slip right into it, because the more you think about what your ex did, or the more you think about how scary the future feels to you, the more you fire and wire certain pathways in your brain. And those pathways that you keep firing and wiring are telling your body to produce cortisol, to produce dopamine, to produce norepinephrine, to produce all of these these chemicals that turn on certain hormones, turn off certain hormones, dysregulate certain hormones, dysregulate your immune system, stress you out basically. So when it comes to no longer living like that, just like an addict logically realizes, yes, I shouldn't keep using. I need to stop this. But the pattern, the habit of continuing to use and using for you could be thinking about all the bad things your ex has done to you and maybe still doing to you if you still have to have contact, like co-parenting or etc. And the more you do that, it becomes kind of like an addiction, because your body literally gets addicted to these chemicals that your thoughts produce. So most people feel like chaos is normal, will feel a little bit more comfortable doing what they've always done, even if it's toxic to them and to other people around them and uncomfortable. That's at least something that they know, that at least brings them certainty. And if you have endured a bad relationship, you were probably hanging on because you wanted a sense of certainty. The future and the unknown felt too scary. Your abandonment anxiety was probably keeping you in those bad situations. So if you continue to keep your chaos going by thinking about the past or worrying about the future or keeping yourself chronically busy, you are essentially avoiding yourself. You're avoiding you're avoiding yourself with a big S. I call it your big self. And the longer you do that, the more ingrained that habit becomes. the more challenging it can be to break that habit. It's not impossible. That's what we do here. But it becomes more the doubt, the seeds of doubt in you about whether or not you can change or have a great relationship get stronger and take stronger roots. So those are the 2 points that I want to make here. If you're living in overwhelm, the biggest thing to realize is that you're living in a fight or flight response, and that living in a fight or flight response is actually normal or feels normal for you. Living in chaos may feel more normal than a sense of security and a sense of happiness. So how do you fix this? The first thing that you have to do is take responsibility. This does not mean that what your ex did was justified. This does not minimize any abuse, but you have to stop blaming your ex and stop blaming all of the crap that's happened to you in the past. We talk to a lot of people every month on breakthrough calls. And I would say the vast majority, the number one thing that is blocking these women is that they are still blaming themselves, blaming their ex, blaming their childhood, blaming their work, all this kind of stuff. And when I say take responsibility, this certainly does not mean blame yourself. It means taking an honest evaluation of your toxic behavior. If you get into toxic relationships, like it or not, and this is your norm, there you have toxic behavior. It takes two to tango. It doesn't mean that you deserve abuse, but it means that you are doing something or not doing something. You are co-creating that dynamic. And the only person that you can change in any relationship setting and in your life is you. So you have to take responsibility and look at all of the ways that you have shortchanged yourself, settled out of fear that you couldn't get better, fear that you would wreck your family, fear that you would not ever meet anybody and cause too much damage to your kids. And by the way, and there's no judgment here, but if you stayed in an unhealthy relationship for your kids, you're doing damage to your kids because they're seeing what a relationship looks like. It's not to mean that they can't change their behavior later on, but if you stay in a marriage and it's toxic and unhealthy and emotionally abusive, and you stay because you don't want to break up the family, you're really living inside of a broken family to begin with. So you have to take responsibility for your behavior, for your thoughts, your actions, all the ways that you have contributed to the dynamics in your relationship. So that's the first step. The second step is that you need to be consistently working with a trauma-informed professional, a trauma-informed therapist who's going to hold you accountable, or a trauma-informed coach who's going to hold you accountable. Therapy tends to focus more on your past. Coaching tends to focus more on your future, seeing you as a whole, complete person right now. And then how can we help you overcome the mindset, the emotional stuff, the subconscious fears that are keeping you fenced in, walled off from your potential, walled off from what you want? How can we overcome that psychology, get you clarity on what you want, and then help you take action every week, every day to get what you want? So why is it so important to work with somebody who is trauma informed? If you have relational trauma, this stuff is not healed by talking about it. When you talk about it, you are reinforcing the wiring up here and the wiring in here associated with that trauma. You have to not, and the trauma is not something that's going to come up as a flashback, although that does happen. I'm going to speak more specifically to relational trauma. Relational trauma is going to surface in the context of a relationship. So that might mean your ex, that might mean dating somebody new, and feeling even the slightest red flag, and boop, there go all the walls, and I'm not going to communicate with this person. I'm not going to talk to this person. It could mean continuing to people please at work with your bosses, with colleagues. Could mean continuing to people please with your family and not setting boundaries. So the things that you tried to do to keep yourself in a toxic relationship with your ex are things that you probably picked up early on in life, in your childhood, that brought you love, that helped you feel safe. And most people keep playing out that stuff as a trauma response from relationship to relationship to relationship. And if you're doing it in your love life, 9 times out of 10, you're doing it in other parts of your life. So you have to be working a trauma-informed method. Trauma-informed method means working with something that's going to use your mind and your body, because we now know that trauma, these emotional reactions are going to be felt down here in your body. They're not going to be something that you can logically work your way through. You're going to have to learn how to feel your feelings, embrace them, not be afraid of them, not be overwhelmed or flooded by them, and learn how to emotionally regulate when you do get triggered and in a relationship setting, and not default to the toxic behavior that has led you to this point. The third thing that you need to have is accountability, especially if you're wanting to have a great relationship in the future. You're wanting to develop your life and really fall in love with your life and eliminate all the bad habits that you're doing that keep yourself stuck in toxic work environments, toxic relationships, lopsided friendships. You need accountability. Accountability means holding your feet to the fire. It means being accountable to yourself. The number one person that breaks the most promises in your life is you. You are the one that breaks the most promises to yourself. It's not other people. So if you've made it 40 or 50 or 60 years of your life, and you give and give and give and give and give in relationships, and you never get what you want in return, you are very likely shortchanging yourself. You're not holding yourself accountable to what it is that you really want. And you're defaulting to trauma responses and behaviors that were born early in your life that you used to try to get your needs met that no longer work right now. So accountability is the third thing. And then clarity on your goals. If you're sitting here and you know that you want a great relationship, you know you want a better life, but thinking of that makes you overwhelmed, there's a trauma response that has to be healed first. And then there has to be continued focus on your goals, accountability, and allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to dream big again and to go after what you really, really want. I will say that 90% of the time when we talk to potential clients on calls, they have a fuzzy idea of what they want, but they're so unclear. They feel afraid that they're not going to be able to get it. They're afraid of failure. They're afraid of succeeding. What will people think of me? They're afraid of, like, how could I, after all the things that I've been through, how could I actually have a great relationship? And they don't allow themselves to get really juicy on what they really, really want. They don't allow themselves to own what they really, really want, because there's all this shame and guilt and lack of worthiness, trauma standing in the way of what they want. So you have to gain clarity on what you want. But going back to earlier points, you have to heal your trauma. And that's what we do inside of Break the Cycle. We help you emotionally regulate, break the toxic addiction to your ex, break your toxic addiction to stuff that keeps you distracted from yourself, like being a workaholic, etc. We help regulate or balance your nervous system, how you feel every day, and then how you're thinking every day, so that you're no longer kind of stuck in this negative loop of, like, what he did to me. Your loop is now changed to, where am I going? Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for my life. We then help you take action on things that are going to get you where you want to be in your life. And the more you take action and step out of your comfort zone and over your fear, the more you condition confidence and the more you condition self-trust. And when you're emotionally regulated and you're more confident, suddenly it becomes a hell of a lot easier to have extreme clarity on what you want in a relationship, what you want in your next job position, what you want at home, what you want with your kids, the types of relationships, the type of life that you want to lead. So that's, in a nutshell, how to overcome that pattern of overwhelm. Overwhelm is oftentimes a trauma response. If you were living on eggshells with your ex, you're going to continue to just take that behavior and transfer it onto your life as a single woman. And that is not a place, an emotional place, a mental place that's going to lead you to a healthy relationship. It's probably going to lead you to another lesson And the more lessons or pain that you experience in relationships, the higher that wall goes up, the more your trust issues go up. And if your walls are up, don't count on another person to get your walls down. You have to get your walls down first. Otherwise, you're going to continue to attract more of what you are, not what you want. So if that sounds intriguing to you, and maybe you've done a lot of talk therapy, you know about your ex's behavior, you know about your childhood behavior, blah, 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 but you're tired of talking about it. You want action, you need accountability, you want more clarity on your goals, you want somebody who's going to help you overcome all the fears and the ways that you self-sabotage, then I invite you to book a free breakthrough call. Go to BethanyDotson.com/talk, and we will have a very honest conversation. I want to put a caveat here. Only book a call if you're willing to have an honest conversation and be challenged and feel uncomfortable and be real. There is no breakthrough that happens on a breakthrough call when somebody is super guarded. That is what has kept you safe, but the call is only for professional, career-driven women who are ready to change and are ready to be really honest with themselves and ready to take action. So there's that caveat. You must be single. Maybe you're kind of sort of dating somebody, but you got to cut it off because it's not working. You're not hoping to go back to your ex-husband or boyfriend. You're successful in your career. You're successful in other parts of your life. Why is this a requirement? Because when we're talking about healing relational trauma, it is best accomplished when other parts of your life are going smoothly. They're not like major sources of stress. They're not going to keep you in survival mode. We want other parts of your life nice and stable. Maybe there's some issues, but it's not like a glaring thing. So successful in other parts of your life. And like I mentioned before, prior therapy, maybe you're seeing a therapist, you like your therapist, or maybe you don't, but you realize you're not getting the results that you want. You feel like you need to try something different and realize that coaching may be maybe a stepping stone or the solution that you need at this point in your life. So BethanyDotson.com/talk. And I hope you have a very beautiful rest of your Tuesday, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.